And they mostly come at night. Mostly.
Hey everyone, Genome here. So I reached out to some of my viewing audience and kind of queried them on what movie they wanted to see next in my review series. And some people were leaning towards sci-fi, some people were saying horror, some people were saying action. And then it occurred to me, why not put them all together into the same movie? Well, there's not too many movies out there that'll fit that bill, but there's one in particular that I think fits it to a T.
I'm not making that out too well. What is it?
Genome.
Tell me, man, I only work here.
And disclaimer, I actually got the idea off of a live stream I did with some compatriots, but they all like the idea. So, and what movie am I talking about, you may ask? Well, it's none other than James Cameron's 1986 magnum opus, Aliens. So yes, Aliens. We are heading back to the militaristic 80s. And we are picking up basically indirectly after the first movie, Alien, left off. Sigourney Weaver has been... Oh, spoilers ahead. I'll try to keep them to a somewhat minimum, but spoilers ahead for a little bit. Sigourney Weaver has been in hypersleep for an extended period of time after jettisoning the alien out of the shuttlecraft as of last time, or lifeboat, I believe they call it. So she's found, resuscitated, brought back before her superiors, the Weyland-Yutani Company. There's some mention made of this in the director's cut, but basically it's never really named other than that. But so the Weyland-Yutani Company kind of holds her responsible, revokes her pilot's license, doesn't believe her story.
And found something never recorded once in over 300 surveyed worlds.
You won't research what's going on.
Why don't you just check out LV-426?
Because I don't have to. There have been people there for over 20 years, and they never complained about any hostile organism.
And she is forced to become basically a glorified dock worker. So fast forward an indeterminate amount of time, and suddenly an emergency beacon comes in, and all of a sudden, the colony on LV-426, where Ripley found the ship to begin with, which had been placed there since she's been asleep, has suddenly stopped talking. So, with the joint effort of the Colonial Space Marines, or I believe just Colonial Marines, Ripley goes as an advisor to LV-426 to face the nightmare once again. So, yeah, we're looking at basically just one holdover from the previous movies, and that's Sigourney Weaver playing Ripley. She turns in a really good performance here. Despite her being very anti-gun, she has no problem picking up weapons in this movie, but I digress. Ripley is basically a person out of time and a person who's lost everything. Once again, in the director's cut, I won't ruin it for you, but she loses someone very special to her, and that helps her bond with the little girl Newt we see later on in the movie once we land down there. Carrie Henn plays Newt. Pretty good performance, I say, for a child actor. She plays the shell-shocked kid, traumatized very well, actually.
Now think, Rebecca. Concentrate. Just start at the beginning.
Yep, she's pretty fun to watch. Pretty believable character. And the last of the really non-militarized characters that we have here is Bert, played by Paul Reiser. He puts on, or he turns in some of a slimy performance as he's supposed to. Seems genuine when we know he's not.
I'm Burke. I'm Carter Burke. I work for the company. But don't let that fool you. I'm really an okay guy.
But his role could have been interspersed with lots of other people I think could have played the role better. But it's not, it was bad or anything. It's just that you don't despise him as much as you should. And he plays with a little too much straight edge. He's a little more nuanced, But at the same time, maybe they played him like that to show that Ripley is not, she's not a stupid woman. She knows she would pick up if he was being disingenuous. So maybe that's how they asked him to play it. But after that, after you get past those characters, let's get to the important characters, and that is the Colonial Marines. What an ensemble cast. And usually when you say ensemble cast, it means a bunch of big names, but really there's no other names in this one except for one person who went on to do, you know, bigger and better things. But you can tell this group worked out a lot together. They moved together as one unit really well. I'm former military too, so I can appreciate good movement tactics and you know, how to guard your six and all that good stuff. And they paid, or at least James Cameron seemed to pay a lot of attention to traditional military tactics when he built this team. You know, in the first movie, Aliens, he envisioned the crew of the Nostromo to be space truckers, right? That's basically what they were, glorified truckers. In this movie, you have basically what is a glorified infantry unit, just thrown a couple hundred years in the future. Tactics are basically the same, weaponry is just about the same, and the behaviors and the chain of command is basically the same. So, interesting, but he puts a small spin on what is normally, or what is nominally a unit that basically survives today, right? Basically more like a platoon, really, in size. So, you know, once we are on the planet, the Marines, of course, are gung-ho to get in there and see some action. They don't really believe what's going on, and they basically find a ghost town. Through some searching and research, they find out that something weird's happened to, of course, to the residents of said colony. And about a third of the way into, or maybe halfway into the movie, we are introduced to the aliens in their hive. I'm skipping over a lot of stuff here. I'm trying to keep these videos a little bit shorter, as per also popular request. But they're faced with a basically impossible situation. They can't use their firearms.
Look, we can't have any firing in there. I want you to collect magazines from everybody.
Is he fucking crazy?
And upon their first meeting, lose over half the team.
Maybe they don't show up on infrared at all.
They lose their transport out of there. They wreck their automated or their automobile type transport, and they are stuck and having to go back to the colony to try to barricade themselves in. You have some knowledge of the girl who survived by herself there for untold amount of time, weeks, months, perhaps, and she kind of says they mostly come out at night, right?
We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
So the clock is ticking there. Well, to further raise the stakes, there's a nuclear, basically, explosion getting ready to happen. The reactor is going critical. So they only have, like, a few hours left to go. So they can't expect rescue anytime soon. The aliens are coming, and they have almost no ammunition because all the weaponry and ammunition was destroyed in the initial onslaught. So it's bad. It's a bad time for them. So they do the best they can, protecting each other, and one by one, or in small groups, they fall, until basically it's just 3 people left. 4, but Hicks is put out. So let me get into what makes the Marines so good. Corporal Hicks basically is the de facto leader for most of this movie, and that's played by Michael Biehn. He's been in several different roles where he plays like the perfect character. And this one, he's more the taciturn, undemonstrative corporal, you know. He's a grunt like the other guys, but you can tell he's thinking back there. So he might be, you know, a little bit more intelligent than his brethren out there. Turning in the tour de force and most memorable performance in the movie, of course, is Bill Paxton playing Hudson, king of the one-liners.
What is it, Private?
How do I get out of this chicken shit outfit?
And it's really interesting to see, like, it's got the reverse hero's journey, like Joseph Campbell in Reverse Hero's Journey here. He starts off as the braggadocio.
Ready to get it on, you know it.
And the somewhat heroic one, even though he is kind of called out when Bishop does the knife trick through the hand. And as stress builds and tension mounts, he starts breaking down, and he starts to turn into the weakest link, basically, of the group.
Now what the fuck are we supposed to do? We're some real pretty shit now, man. You finished?
He does redeem himself at the end, so he has the good redemption story.
Jesus Christ, Jim, look out!
But it's just kind of cool. It's like the reverse hero's tale, so it's interesting. But great performance by Bill. You can laugh with him, and you can kind of root and raw for him.
I'm ready, man. Ready to get it on. Go!
But it's good stuff. Vasquez. Oh yes, Private Vasquez. She of the giant smart gun.
Let's rock!
Most badass chick ever to grace the screen on any kind of action or sci-fi or horror movie, right? Vasquez. She's played by Jeanette Goldstein. All right. It's such an interesting swap there. But it works. She pulls it off, man. She pulls it off. I didn't know it till years later reading IMDb that, you know, she wasn't of any kind of Latino at all heritage. But she plays it off with good aplomb. You might also remember her from another James Cameron movie. She played, I can't remember the stepmother's name, but the stepmother to Eddie Furlong, John Connor, and T2. And yeah, she didn't meet too good into that movie either. Vasquez, great stuff here. Her partner in crime is Drake, played by Mark Rolston. Mark Rolston has been a kind of character actor in many different movies. Here he plays the complete martinet. You know, he just wants to get out there and blow shit up.
Drake, we are leaving!
Excuse my French. And he does that for a while until, you know, the end draws nigh. But you also might remember him as Boggs in Shawshank Redemption. So he can go from slimy, detestable character into something much more noble. And he every role I've ever seen him in, he plays really well. So I like him as the choice here. The leader, there's two technically de facto leaders here. The first line supervisor and the one really in charge is Apone, played by Al Matthews. If memory serves, Al Matthews is the only guy here with any military service out of this crew, and it shows.
Oh, on the ready line. Are you me? Yeah! Are you me? Yeah! Where are you? What are you?
It shines through. He's the perfect loudmouth, profane, brash, cigar chomping NCO, man. He's just, oh, he's so good.
Day in the Marine Corps is like a day on the farm. Every meal's a banquet. Every paycheck a fortune. Every formation a parade. I love the Corps.
It's such a shame when he goes because he's so good. I would love to see him in something else in a similar vein. Just nails it out of the park. It's very, very comfortable. He has this aura of leadership and command about him. Like, you know, they've been through some stuff together, and they just automatically look to him for the answers, even though they give him a hard time.
Man, the floor is freezing.
What do you want me to do? Fetch your slippers for you?
Gee, would you, sir? I'd like that.
Look into my eye.
He's still obviously the man in charge, and he will brook no interference. Now, in his way, for the most part, is Lieutenant Gorman. Lieutenant Gorman is played by William Hope in a role I didn't really like too much for the most part, but I've grown to appreciate it a little more, okay? So Lieutenant Gorman is the stereotypical green, I don't know if he's second lieutenant probably, or just maybe he's first lieutenant, maybe he's got a promotion, I don't know, it's hard to tell. But, you know, he's green, he tries to effect a command presence.
All right. Now listen up. I want this thing to go smooth and by the numbers.
But no one's listening to him. They don't respect him.
Hicks, meet me at the South Lock. We're coming in.
Roger. He's coming in. I feel safer already.
The man had never worked with him before. And they later find out he's never been on a combat mission. So, yeah, Apone is leader by default, but, you know, he takes orders from Gorman, who is the leader. Now, in a mission this important, they would not be sending some lieutenant out there by himself. They'd have, you know, at least a major or something, at least staying on the command ship to give directions. But anyway, Lieutenant Gorman, played by William Hope. I've grown to like this role more of his. because once again, even though they show him to botch a few things, he's a very human character, man. And, you know, every experienced officer or leader of any kind, NCO officer, whatever, you know, you're not always going to look your best, especially in your first mission. You're trying to lead people. You're trying to gain respect. This is a motley crew. It's obviously been together for a long time, and he's the outsider. He's a complete outsider here. And these are the kind of grunts that don't like officers, you know. So he's got a lot going against him here. And, of course, Ripley shows him up.
Tell him to fall back. Tell him to fall back.
You're cut off! Do something!
But he's really a good dude. He's in it a little bit over his head. But I like the air that he puts off of when he's in civilization. He obviously controls this unit.
Ordnance loading, weapon strip, and drop ship prep details will have 7 hours. Now move it, people.
But once it gets to the planet LV-426, he loses it. I mean, that is no longer his unit. Even though he tells Apone what to do, Apone is the one that gets things done. And it's kind of a slow burn kind of role, but he plays it really well. And finally, to round out the cast, I can't name everybody, but we have the synthetic being or synthetic person, the android Bishop.
I prefer the term artificial person myself.
Played like Lance Henriksen. Lance Henriksen is great as Bishop. He has this otherworldly presence about him. Something seems not quite right about him at all times, whether it's his mannerisms, he stares a little too long at people.
Hello, Bishop. Do you need anything else?
No.
And he's very good at roles like this. He reminds me a lot of like Hugo Weaving. He has that kind of otherworldly look about him, and something of him is just a little bit off normal. I'm not saying that he's not a normal person in real life. It's just that he's able to convey in his acting something is just quite a little bit off. He's just a little bit different than everybody else, and he plays this role like gangbusters, man. He nails it out of the park. Bishop is a likable character, even though Ripley doesn't like him for most of the movie. And even when we find out he's an android, we still like him, and we feel bad for him at the end. And he shows true bravery, wit, intelligence, and he's just a valued part of this picture. So, as a whole, the Marines, including the smaller bit pieces like Frost and all of them, and Spunkmeyer and all that, you don't see too much of them, but they just gel so incredibly well.
Have you ever been mistaken for a man?
No. Have you?
Oh, that's scared. He just too bad.
And just such a great thing to see. So I won't get into spoiling the ending for you or even any of the more of the middle parts. I'll leave that for other reviewers. But as far as what this movie does right, it's a long list. Of course, they cast perfectly. The look of the movie is amazing. I love the look of the pulse rifles. To this day, they look badass, right? The smart guns look freaking amazing. The bits of armor that they have embellished with different things, like Vasquez writing stuff on hers.
Those weapons stowed. Let's go. Come.
And little ornaments are hanging on themselves. Just, it gives every character a face. Even they're all technically adorned the same way, they all look completely different. You know, Hudson's walking around with his John Wayne unstrapped helmet at all times, and it's just the little bead mics and all that they have. I mean, it's obviously dated stuff, but once again, these guys are supposed to be, or the future that Cameron paints in these alien movies is much less technically, shall we say, evolved and streamlined like the Star Trek stuff or Star Wars, you know. Everything's still big and clunky, and basically they're shooting each other with the same weaponry you could be almost using today, right? But the look of the movie is great. It's dark, it's gloomy, lighting is great. The aliens look freaking amazing in this movie. Obviously, this is no CG in this movie, so it's all done practically. So just the effects are just stupendous across the board. I didn't know for many a year that APCs were like toy cars. They're small little models, basically scale models. So there's a little bit of matte work, you can tell. But for the most part, everything just looks just freaking amazing. The Queen is something to behold. The exosuit is incredible as well. He does great work with sound, like the slight hissing of the aliens. noise or the beep of the motion tracker, well, it's so annoying. It is also so claustrophobic, man. As it gets close, stuff gets closer and closer. The pulse rifles, once again, they sound amazing. The smart guns sound amazing. There's like this noise that these grenades make when Ripley fires them into the Queen's egg-laying sack, right? Just all the sounds are amazing. The militaristic kind of musical score just fits the mood perfectly.
Get hot! 1, 2, 3, come on, get out, get out, get out! Move it out, move it out, move it out! Move it out, move it out, move it out! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Action sequences are great. I remember when my wife first saw this movie, we'd been together for a while, and she had never seen this. She's a sci-fi fan. She'd never seen this movie. I showed it to her, and this is, what, 8, 9 years ago? Not that long ago. At the end of the movie, she's like, that was intense. This movie will not let you breathe. Once they hit the planet, you are in a constant state of tension, waiting for the next shoe to drop.
Movement!
What's the position?
Can't lock in.
Talk to me, Hudson.
You know, the next problem to assert itself, the next alien to attack, the next thing to blow up, you know. There's always something. You are never, ever safe in this movie. And James pulls off the fear factor and the tension and the mood just to perfection. There's not really much not to like about this movie. There's the typical bad guy corporate kind of angle that gets played in the movies quite a bit. It's not overdone, but you can tell that's where the problem started, so it really wasn't necessary, but I guess they had to get him out there somehow, so I don't know. And you would like to see Hicks a little more involved in the very ending, but you know, Ripley is the hero of the saga, so they had to give it to her. And they set up the means with which he does it pretty good earlier on, so it's a little foreshadowing at the very beginning of the movie. So her punishment actually turned into an asset, as it turns out. But and it was sad to see Apone go early like he did, because he was amazing. You'd like to see him last a little bit longer.
Absolutely badasses! Let's pack them in! Get in there!
But, I mean, other than those minor nitpicks, what else can you say? This movie was the perfect blend of horror, sci-fi, action. I don't know, I think it's probably his best movie. It's probably James Cameron's best movie that he's ever done. I don't know if you would agree to that, but that's just my opinion about it. From the look, the acting, the set pieces, they're just, I don't know what he's done that's ever been better. Doing all this on a limited budget too. I think it was like $18 million he did this with. No help from CGI. And I hear the sets were rife with some production issues, possibly. So you get varied sources on that. But anyway, just an amazing movie. If you haven't seen it, you owe it to yourself to go watch it. Don't watch it in a well-lit room. Watch it in a darkened room with very loud sound, because that's just the only way to watch it. It's like playing like a Silent Hill or Resident Evil game. You got to play that stuff in the dark, you know. But do yourself a favor. Go out and watch Aliens. Revel in the amazing set pieces, revel in the amazing cast, and just revel in the goodness of what was probably the last good Alien movie. And if you ask me, it is the benchmark by which all other sci-fi horror movies are to be measured. So anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more movie reviews, more music reviews, more comic reviews, and more top 10 lists. Heck, just lots of review stuff in general. Not to mention more motovlogs and more and more and more coming at you. So, thanks for watching. Until next time, this is Genome. They mostly come at night. Mostly out.